also say working with a team, I know that sounds cliche, but kind of like you have a role, and it's not everyone can be the star player, and not everybody can play on the power play. And you kind of learn that through hockey, that it's about the team winning. And it's just you learn that it's way more fun to win as a team.
Hey everybody, Tanner here with WAGMI Ventures. On today's episode, we have Trevor Koverko, co-founder of Polymath, as well as an active Web3 investor. For anyone who's new, this is the WAGMI Ventures podcast, where we do snapshots with interesting founders from across Web3. Check out wagmiventures.io to learn more about the syndicate behind the podcast. But for now, let's get into it with Trevor from Polymath. All right. Hey, everybody. I'm here today with Trevor Koverko, founder at Polymath, as well as an active angel investor in the Web3 space. Trevor, how's it going today?
It's going good, man. Thanks for having me on. I'm a big fan of WAGMI and a proud participant of the syndicate.
Awesome. Yeah. I'm really excited to chat. This episode, just for the listeners listening, I think is going to be a little bit of a different episode than they may be used to. And I'm really excited about that, actually. You have a really interesting journey through Web3 and even actually before Web3. So I think we're going to go off script a little bit. I'm excited to see where the conversation goes, and let's jump into it. Why don't you just tell us where you are now? And you've built several companies in Web3. You've made over 40 investments across the space. You're very active charitably. Where did all this start? How did you get to where you are now?
Yeah, I was just really lucky. I'm from Toronto, and it was as simple as that early on. I happened to be in the same city that Ethereum was co-founded, and I was very early and active in that community. And I remember the early days when guys like Charles Hoskinson and Joe Lubin and Vitalik and Anthony Diorio and Gavin Wood and all these guys who are kind of legends in the space. We're just getting started. And a lot of us, were living in our parents' basement and that kind of thing. And that was basically my ticket into the space, was just kind of going to those early Bitcoin meetups at Bitcoin Decentral in Toronto, and then kind of getting the bug and going all in on it.
Very cool. Okay. So, before all this, you had a career as a professional athlete. Is that right?
Yeah, that's being a bit generous, but I was a hockey guy, kind of being from Canada. That's one of our favorite pastimes. And that was my kind of full-time career up until my kind of early 20s.
Okay, so I'd love to learn a little bit more about that transition. You don't hear about a lot of professional athletes making a full-time jump to Web3. Could you talk a little bit about what that transition looked like?
Yeah, it sure wasn't a seamless one. Basically, the pinnacle of my hockey career is I was drafted to the NHL, which is kind of the top hockey league in the world. And the New York Rangers selected me, and life was good, and it was kind of an amazing experience. Just like the level of discipline and the bar is so high and it's so competitive. It might be the only place on earth more competitive than like Silicon Valley startups is professional sports. But that was kind of my gig, and basically it all kind of ended abruptly. I was in a pretty serious car accident in 2005, I want to say. And that was kind of, the ending of one chapter and the beginning of a new one. So, that was kind of a big turning point for me.
Got it. Okay. I'm curious, from what I've read online, it seems like there was a big process of, after that wreck, it seems like there was a process of kind of rebuilding in some ways, rebuilding physically and rebuilding professionally. And so I'm curious, what was your source of motivation then? Like, what were you talking to yourself about as you sort of pushed your way forward through a physical recovery, and then also kind of figuring out, okay, what am I going to spend time on now, if not hockey? And
yeah, it was a good bang up. I was diagnosed with a permanent disability. Actually, I was paralyzed in my left side, and it was just one of those things. Again, just got really lucky and fortunate that I was in my early 20s, so I was pretty young, and usually the age of the victim determines the outcome. So I was kind of lucky in that sense. And yeah, just seeing it really put perspective kind of in my life, because I saw a lot of people that were my residents, I guess, as an inpatient in the hospital and in the ICU prior to that. And some people recovered really well and some didn't. So I just felt really lucky that I was able to turn the corner and relearn how to gain kind of my mobility and getting my cognitive functions kind of back up as well. And I still kind of struggle with some things to this day, but there's definitely a battle, and I think it kind of put me in a good position to kind of be more resilient with other challenges that come up in life as well. Even just the second part of your question on kind of the motivation and what keeps you going. For me, it wasn't like too dramatic of some greater purpose or anything. I just kind of labeled myself. It was like an identity thing. I labeled myself as a founder, and that was like my identity. I'm a founder. I'm not an investor. I'm not an operator necessarily, although usually the best founders are. But I just kind of labeled myself with that identity. And every time something bad happened, whether it was a car accident and sitting in the hospital it's actually a funny story. When you have a serious brain injury, you actually lose power of attorney over yourself. So you literally, you don't have freedom in your life. Like, you can't make decisions for yourself. Wow. So as I started recovering, it's like a legal thing, I guess, to help navigate through these tough times. So I was trying to leave. I was starting to get better, and I was like, I had a business on the side I was trying to run, but I couldn't really run it from the hospital. So I was trying to escape the hospital, but you literally can't. So they had to put a bailiff on me to make sure I didn't leave. And a couple times I tried to break out. I have a twin brother, and I tried to when he fell asleep one time when he was visiting me, I tried to pretend I was him and sneak out to get out of the hospital. But yeah, it was just, to me, it was like, I don't need motivation. It's just my job is, I'm a founder. What do founders do? They hustle and they grind and they're resourceful, and that was kind of my thing. So that's every time something happened, I would just kind of default to, hey, whether I'm motivated or not this morning, this is my job, this is what I do, and I'm just gonna do my duty to myself, and that kind of helped me get through all the shitty times.
Yeah, definitely. I'm curious, maybe kind of last question here, connecting these dots, but I'm curious, you don't talk to, kind of like I've said, you don't talk to a lot of folks working in Web3 that have a professional athlete background, and truly even a lot of founders in tech don't often have a professional athlete background. So I'm curious about how similar those things are. How similar is how similar is being a founder to being a professional athlete, or or starting a venture to playing professional sports?
I'll start with the positive things, because there's definitely things I didn't appreciate. I was getting started in my career as a founder because I didn't have a lot of experience. And not only that, I was late. I went back to school, 3 years later than my peers because of my professional hockey career. So it was a struggle. You don't have a lot of marketable job skills. You don't have a lot of experience and whatnot. So that was probably the negative side of it. But on the positive side, it's just really an elite mindset. Everything is on the razor edge of, are you going to get cut? Are you going to make the starting lineup? Are you going to be in the top pairing of defenseman or the second or the third? It's every day you got to fight for your life. And I think that's the biggest takeaway for me, is just it's a battle every day, and there's so much competition out there. Like I said, I think it's the only place on the planet more competitive than Silicon Valley is professional sports, because everybody wants to be at it. Everybody's good. The bar is so high. Yep. Everybody works their ass off. When I was getting started, it was kind of an older era in hockey, so it was a little more old school, and there wasn't quite as much nutrition and scientific athletics that you have now, and big data and whatnot. But yeah, that was, for me, that was the biggest takeaway is the competitiveness. I'd also say working with a team, I know that sounds cliche, but kind of you have a role, and it's not everyone can be the star player, and not everybody can play on the power play. And you kind of learn that through hockey, that it's about the team winning. And it's just you learn that it's way more fun to win as a team. It's kind of pointless. Like I couldn't even imagine winning an individual sport, like tennis or something. Like that would suck. Like you don't get to share it
Right.
with your teammates, And
Right.
I think that
You pat yourself on the back and go home.
yeah, it's all about you, and you get to post on
Yeah.
Instagram and get a bunch of likes or whatever. But with the team, it's like you're winning together, and that's just so much more fulfilling to me. And I think that's a big thing for business as well, because like that's the name of the game. You want to win with your teammates, you want to win with your colleagues and your employees and your bosses or whoever it is. You just kind of want to win together. So that was kind of another thing for me.
Yeah, really interesting. So, early days, as you were thinking about starting teams, then how do you think about building the right team, making sure the composition's right, making sure the right talent's in the room? How did you think about those kinds of problems? Especially, sounds like coming into things the way you did.
Yeah, there's kind of a couple ways to look at it, because and I have to drill this into my head almost every day. Like it's all about the team. It's all about the people. Nothing else matters. Like that's the kind of mindset you need to have. Is I was listening to a podcast yesterday actually about the early days at Microsoft, and there was a big time recruit that was debating about where to go between all of Peter Thiel's portfolio companies. He had like 4 or 5 of them that he was exploring. And he called Peter and he's like, which one should I join? And he said, Facebook. He said, Facebook just has the best people, and it's as simple as that. That's where you want to go. It doesn't matter the highest growth. It doesn't matter the sexiest logo or the biggest VCs. It's like, who has the best people? That's going to be the most fulfilling and the best chance of success. And sometimes I forget that, because sometimes, you delegate your people skill stuff, you delegate recruiting, you don't do your one-on-ones, you don't do your check-ins, you don't do your performance reviews. And it really, if you're not doing that, your company is slowly decaying. And you might not know why, because, people might leave and give you a fake excuse or something. But to me, looking back and zooming out, it's really all about the people. So that's how I always start these things. It's like you really have to kind of constantly remind yourself how important it is. And then step 2 is kind of getting into the, to your question, the strategy and the tactics around building a team. And I don't claim to be the best at this or an expert at this or anything, but I kind of like to reverse engineer it and say, what's the funnel? Are we getting referrals from existing team members? By the way, that's the best way to start. To have kind of warm referrals from your own network. And then you kind of go out to another concentric circle. And how are you doing recruiting otherwise? Is it like an inbound thing to get talent through, posting content? Or are you going outbound by using like a recruiting agency? I've actually had a lot of success with recruiters, especially for hiring CEOs nowadays. It's awesome. They do a lot of the work for you, but you still kind of get to make the decision at the end of the day. So it's still a work in progress for me. I'm still learning this. And by the way, it's not just like finding the right people too. That's just step 1. It's the onboarding, it's the nurturing, it's the putting in the deliverables and the guardrails around these people and these executives to make them successful and to keep the alignment. So it really is a full-time job inside of a full-time job, is kind of keeping your people operations up to speed. And I think as a founder, that's something you can't really delegate.
Love it. Okay, so let's flash forward. So now we're kind of present day. You're a veteran of the space. I'm curious, transitioning to talking more about kind of just state of things in the industry. What kind of importance do you place on this particular bear market and kind of the one we've been in for a bit as maybe a winnowing mechanism for weeding out those that weren't here for the right reasons? And I'm curious too, as a veteran of the space, like what do you think the right reasons for being in Web3 are?
I am so happy about this bear market. I mean, it was so needed. I get uncomfortable in the hype cycles. It just feels weird to me, and it feels like value is just disappearing. It's just a weird dynamic. It's kind of like, if you're addicted to a drug or something, the withdrawal is the healthy part. Like you need that. It's not. It sucks. It hurts, but if you zoom out, it's the most vital thing you can do to flush your system out and to start fresh and recalibrate. So that's one way I kind of look at these things. It was just needed. We got ahead of our ski tips as an industry a little bit. I'll also say personally, it was kind of nice because I don't know. if the listeners are like me, but in the bull market, you're not sleeping, you're not taking care of yourself, you're traveling way too much, you're doing way too many deals, let alone doing them at good valuations and whatnot. So for me, like, this is an awesome time just to kind of chill out, consolidate the portfolio, simplify. That's a big thing with these crypto deals, as you know, like, I'm not doing as many individual angel investing as much. It's just a lot of work, even as a passive investor, just to track everything, to make sure the vesting schedules are getting paid on time and whatnot. So for me, like, the bear market's also been kind of nice just to simplify my kind of venture arm of what I do and consolidate a lot of the.
Yeah, super interesting. So, in light of all that, what do you, or really actually, this is the question I want to ask, where I'm really curious, like, where do you hope the Web3 space evolves towards? If you've kind of already established a little bit of what you hope it moves away from.
I think about this a lot. Like, everyone talks about, it's this crazy, unregulated, Wild West industry, but I hope we don't lose that quite yet. We still have, as an industry, a lot of experimentation to do. We have a lot of, self-examination and a lot of product market fit finding of, like, if we institutionalize and get too kind of, frameworked out and mental modeled out and whatnot, I think we'll lose a lot as an industry. So that's kind of one thing. But at the same time, I like seeing the evolution of the space, and the maturation is also good. And I always look to kind of the industry stalwarts who sometimes get a bad reputation for some reason, but like the big VCs, especially the ones in Silicon Valley, I think are so important to the industry to bring the free content like they do. I always encourage people to look at the stuff Andreessen Horowitz puts out through Crypto Startup School. It's just amazing value, community serving stuff. And I hope we kind of continue to, piggyback off of a lot of the work that a lot of those folks are doing to, I wouldn't say institutionalize, but kind of like help the industry mature and avoid a lot of the pitfalls that we've gotten into so far.
Love it. Yeah. So maybe funny question here, but why are you personally still in Web3 where, after all the turbulence and scams and hypes and busts, like, what keeps you personally sticking around, giving back, investing, doing more, etc.?
There's really nowhere else to be. It's as simple as that. For me, it's not even a debate. Like, just both subjectively of like, this is my identity and crypto for the win and all that, but also objectively, like, there's no better place to be. And I don't care what segment of the market you're in. I don't care if you're an investor. I don't care if you're an operator. I don't care if you're an executive, like, or a student. For everybody, this is the best place to be. Like, just some examples for an investment. Some of the best performing VC funds of all time are Web3 VCs. And I'm sure, you talk to a lot of them on a daily basis, but if you just look at the, multiple on invested capital or the total distributions paid out, these are like 100x funds in some cases. So like, there's a lot of exciting upside and alpha you can get as an investor. So that's one category. As a founder, are you kidding me? This is for someone like me, kind of non-conformist a little bit and try, likes being early to things and hanging out with kind of, interesting people. There's no other place to be. Like, it's just an absolute non-starter. If you just keep going down the list, as a young person, a student looking to learn new and interesting things, and also that kind of collective purpose of building something greater than the sum of the parts, building something that's going to last, building something that's going to replace a lot of outdated and antiquated stuff that we've built as a society over the last few decades. So yeah, for all those reasons, there's just absolutely nowhere else to be. And every time I get a shiny object pulled away for like, AI or something, I'm just like, nope.
Yeah.
Let's remember there's no better place to be, even in the depths of this nuclear bear market here, which I don't even think is that bad, to be honest. This isn't the worst one we've been through for those of us who've been around for a little while. There's just nowhere else to be.
Yeah, I resonate with a lot of that. So a couple more questions here. I'm curious, what's been the hardest lesson you've learned in your entrepreneurial journey? where, just the thing that you've encountered and been like, man, I do not want to repeat that mistake again, go through that again. What would you say to that?
What order do you want this list in? It's a long alphabetical.
Right.
Excuse me. I think for me, it's just staying true to kind of my authentic self. It might sound a bit cliche, but just like, for some reason, like I always had this, like, I have to be someone else, or, this is the movie I watched about Steve Jobs. So, I have to run my company like him. And the more I kind of studied other successful founders and companies, is that there's no rule. Like, any type of personality, any type of leadership style across the gamut can be successful and can create, a lot of value. So, for an example, to kind of put this together, is like, I've kind of learned a lot about my strengths and weaknesses over the years, and knowing, not only what I'm good at, but what I enjoy doing on a day-to-day basis and what I don't. And I think that's been kind of the biggest leap forward for me, is just knowing, hey, you don't have to be good at everything. You don't have to be an amazing investor. You don't have to be an amazing operator. You don't have to be an amazing founder all at the same time. You can specialize. You can like get rid of the stuff you don't like doing, and it's a personal, subjective thing. You can't just follow
Right.
what people on Twitter are saying or society says or whatever. You just have to kind of have that introspective talk to yourself. So everything that I've done that hasn't really been fulfilling or hasn't really added value is typically because I was trying to be someone I'm not, or try to do something that I don't both like doing and would consider like have a unique advantage as well.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. So as you've leaned into that authenticity, what's the thing you would point to as being most professionally proud of, or the thing that you're most grateful that you've gotten to contribute, professionally speaking?
I just love being a founder, and I love the early stages of being a founder. And I kind of had self-hatred around that, because I was always like, oh no, you have to be like this hardcore technical operator to for anyone to care what you're doing. But I think found a good niche of whether it's Polymath, which is kind of my first foray into the Web3 space. And by the way, for all the younger people out there, when I started Polymath, it was I was kind of known as the guy who was like going to all the conferences and just not doing anything. And I had a guy, one of the founders of Ethereum, and one of the founders of Ethereum kind of called me out. He's my buddy, and he's like, "Dude, are you gonna like do something, or just constantly just go to these conferences all day?" And I'm like, yeah, I guess it's time for me to do something. And the origins of Polymath, by the way, was I was running like a little private equity fund at the time, and I was going to tokenize it, and that was like the big idea, and I was so proud of it. And I showed it to Anthony, and he's like, this isn't that exciting. It's kind of centralized. And he kind of helped me ideate around, what if you could, instead of tokenizing your own security, what if you could create a platform that made it easy for anyone to tokenize any security, kind of like the meta layer on top of that. And that was kind of the origin story of Polymath. And I am very proud of Polymath and where it is today. We've actually evolved from being a layer 2 on Ethereum to our own purpose-built blockchain for security tokens. And that was kind of a big, massive pivot, because launching a dApp, a decentralized application on another layer 1, is completely different than launching your own layer 1 and thinking about the consensus and thinking about how are you going to set up your validator network? How are you going to build a developer community? So it was a big decision, but one we didn't take lightly. I remember at the time, we didn't have a lot of chops around building a new layer 1 protocol. So we actually roped in Charles Hoskinson early on to help us kind of architect the original platform. And he was absolutely amazing at helping us think through some hard challenges and decisions early on. And I think we're at a great place now. We completely decentralized both the protocol itself and also the structure as kind of a not-for-profit Swiss foundation or an association, and that's been amazing as well. And for me, it was a big moment as well, because I had to kind of let go of control completely and the admin keys, the treasury keys, like everything had to go towards this new entity. And that was like a big, scary moment. But that's
Yeah.
another, piece of advice I have for founders is like, if you can't do that, and I struggled with it too, but if you can't let go of the wheel, what are you doing? You're in the wrong space. Like the whole point of this industry is that it's community driven. The community is not just important for your project; it is your project, and you have to hand over in an intelligent way. I would encourage people to look at some of the content Andreessen puts out, where it's like you can't just decentralize too quickly. You have to follow the Web2 model of like get product market fit, build a community, and then and only then can you kind of decentralize to the community. Because if you do it too prematurely, then it's just not going to work. So it's a bit of a rant there, but that was kind of that journey, I guess, is what I'm kind of most proud of kind of getting from the early days, launching in 2017, and then getting to where we're at today as a fully distributed, decentralized layer one blockchain, and kind of a really interesting space. You and I could talk a lot longer about how excited I am for security tokens and how I think with all the craziness going on and uncertainty from a regulation standpoint, I think this is the perfect time to be thinking about where value accrual is going to happen in the security token space. Is it going to be at the liquidity layer, the exchanges? Is it going to be at the protocol layer, like Polymesh? Is it going to be at the decentralized module application layer, like Polymath 1.0? So anyways, that's kind of what I'm really curious to see how it plays out, even though I'm not driving the bus anymore.
Yeah, super interesting. Okay, Trevor, so you've given some great advice, like being authentic to your strengths and weaknesses, and just generally there not being one playbook for how to be a founder, right? But I guess I'm curious, if you had to sum up your most generalizable advice for founders building in the Web3 space particularly, what advice would you give those founders?
You cannot get around product market fit. You cannot get around talking to your customers. Trust me, I tried. I tried to skip that step. Doesn't work. You gotta get product market fit. And that looks a little different depending on where you're building in the stack. And, if you're like a hardcore deep tech, layer zero type thing, yeah, it's a little more long neck beard type stuff than getting but you still need it. And I would just say, like, always remember, when you start a company, you're either one of two things. You're either pre-product market fit or you are post-product market fit. And another mistake I've made is you cannot delegate product market fit. Again, I've tried. You cannot hire someone to get product market fit for you. That is the founder's job. If you want good content on this, go to the free stuff Y Combinator puts out on YouTube. You have to get product market fit yourself. And I don't care if you're Web 2, Web 3, Web 4, you gotta get product market fit. And then there's other things I would say, but if you're going to take one thing away, it's that.
Love it.
Sure.
Okay, Trevor, what are you working on right now, and what's the best way for people to follow along on the journey?
So one quick evolution I did as I moved kind of more towards being a founder rather than being a day-to-day operator of each individual deal. It's allowed me to explore some things I'm passionate about in addition to just the Web3 native stuff. I've been getting into public market, I guess the public markets world of traditional TradFi pubcos. There's a deal I started called tokens.com with Andrew Kegel, who's the current CEO. And it was a lot of fun. It was the quick backstory, if we have another minute or two, was I owned this domain called tokens.com. And I bought it off this kind of like sketchy domain broker back in 2018 or 2019. And I'm like, you know what the hell? I'll send this money to escrow.com. And sure enough, the thing was legit. And I'm sitting on this domain for a couple of years of tokens.com. I'm like, oh, what am I going to do with it? And then I got an offer for it, and it was like a little profit and whatever. And I was like, I just don't know if I want to be the guy that's, buys a piece of land and then just sells the land.
Sure.
I'd rather like build something on it, like build a house or something. So I partnered with a friend of mine, Andrew, who was leaving another pubco that he started, and we said, "What's next?" And we said, "Well, maybe like proof of work mining." There's a lot of public companies in proof of work mining. in Canada, where I'm from. And you said, well, maybe the next thing is proof of stake, because that's where the puck is going, to use another Canadian analogy. And so anyway, long story short, we launched a deal together. Kind of in this case, we were kind of 50-50 partners, and we brought in some other folks as well. But he was the CEO and did a great job, helped get this thing listed. And we did a brokered fundraise as well, which was really fun, because I've never heard of such a thing where you hire a banker to raise you money. In Silicon Valley, it's like the founder is the broker, and you got to do everything. It's you got to set up all the meetings and do the pitching, and then follow up with everyone. But in this case, you just hire the bankers. They set up your meetings. They make it easy for you. They follow up with people, and then by Monday morning, the money's in escrow. So that was kind of fun, and we got that live, and it's off and running, and I think it's in a great position strategically, and so that's kind of the latest thing I'm doing now that Polymesh is up and running independently, and tokens.com is up and running. I'm working on a new deal called Matador as well, which is kind of like tokenizing gold, kind of like a new reimagined version of Paxos, because we really like those guys and took a lot of inspiration from them. And that's kind of my main thing these days.
Very cool. Trevor, thank you so much for coming on the show. This is super interesting, and I can't wait to keep watching how all these projects go and to stay in touch over the coming months and years. So have a great rest of your week, and thanks again.
Thanks, Tanner. Appreciate it.